Do you remember the lawyer on that occasion? Well, first of all, once again, were you sworn to tell the truth, Mr. Ivey?
Yes.
Did you tell the truth?
Yes.
Okay. And do you remember the lawyer asking you on page 63, line 21? Okay, now do you remember the titles? I may have asked you this, but I don't remember. Do you remember the titles of any of these academic studies? And your answer was, no, I do not. Question was, do you remember the authors of any of them? Answer, no, I do not. Do you remember giving that testimony at that time?
No, I
No predicate.
Was it the truth, sir?
No predicate.
Yes, that was the truth.
Was that your testimony back then?
Yes.
So that the fact of the matter is you don't remember the names or the authors of any of the academic studies that you relied upon that were presented to you by General Motors staff, do you?
No predicate.
I do not remember the titles.
Or the authors?
No, I do not.
Okay. And you don't remember who gave them to you, right?
As
No,
answered repetitive.
No, I do not.
But we do know that you used those academic studies in the preparation of your value analysis marked as Exhibit 4, don't we?
Yes.
Okay. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever seen the study that was done by Ford Motor Company concerning the Ford Pinto?
No, no, I haven't.
You familiar with that value analysis or cost-benefit analysis that was done by Ford?
I know that they did one.
Okay.
That's right.
Yeah, but you've never seen a copy of it?
No, I haven't.
Did you use that Ford Pinto analysis in any way in arriving at your analysis that's been marked as Exhibit 4?
No, I did not.
You prepared that analysis on June 29th of 1973,
Correct.
and when you prepared that analysis, you most likely wrote it out in longhand,
Most likely.
even though you could type at the time.
I didn't have a typewriter accessible.
Oldsmobile you didn't have a typewriter in the whole product engineering center of Oldsmobile?
Objection, it's argumentative.
The secretaries had the typewriters.
Okay. So your best recollection is that you wrote it out longhand?
Yes.
And at the time you wrote it out, you would have been in your office in the southwest corner of the first floor of the Oldsmobile Product Engineering Center in Lansing?
Yes.
And then after you wrote this memorandum out in longhand, you gave it to a secretary by the name of Pam Ballard?
Yes.
And she was the secretary of Mr. Ralph Perkins?
Yes.
And you told us earlier he was the head of the Advanced Design Department?
Yes.
So you gave, just so the jury can see on the organizational chart, Mr. Perkins was, if we just hold this up for a second. You were down here as a senior project engineer, and your direct supervisor was Mr. Wallace, and his boss was Mr. Perkins, who was the head of the Advanced Design Department, correct?
Correct.
And you didn't give it to your secretary. Did you have a secretary?
No, the only secretary in the department was Miss Ballard.
Mr. Perkins' secretary?
Yes.
So she's the one that typed the memorandum for you?
Yes.
Okay.
Can we get that phone out of the room or turn it off, please?
Sure, let's go out the record just a second.
Off the record, 511-57.
Hold on.
Where did that?
Back on the record, 513-20.
Now, after you gave this report to Pam Ballard and she typed it up, you don't know what happened to it after that, do you?
I signed it, and I'm not certain where it went after that.
Okay. You signed it to authenticate it that was your actual findings and your conclusions, correct?
Yes.
And the initials PB are there on the back page. Pam Ballard, PB, that's how we know that she is the one that signed it, or that typed it.
Yes.
And the date there is June 29th, 1973, correct?
That's correct.
For all you know, that memorandum was sent and distributed to other people in General Motors, but you don't know one way or the other.
I do not believe it was sent to anyone or distributed.
But you don't know one way or the other, do you, sir?
No, I do not.
Okay, so it's possible that the memorandum was sent and distributed to other people and you just don't know it, correct?
Speculative.
I won't speculate on that, and I don't believe it was sent.
Okay, but you don't know, do you?
Asked and answered.
No, I do not.
Okay. You didn't keep a copy of the memo for yourself, did you?
No, I did not.
And so we know that somehow that Exhibit 4 ended up in the corporate files of General Motors, otherwise we wouldn't have it here today, correct?
Objection to the characterization. Go ahead.
It would have gone into the advanced design files.
Okay, would become a part of the General Motors files in the Advanced Design Department.
Yes.
Okay, and do you know that that's where it went?
I don't know for certain that.
Okay. You don't know whether Mr. Perkins, who was the boss, or who was Pam Ballard's boss, ever saw the memo, do you?
No, I do not.
You don't know whether Mr. Wallace ever saw the memo?
No, I do not.
You don't know if Mr. Ball ever saw the memo?
No, I do not.
You don't know if Mr. Dorshimer ever saw the memo?
No, I do not.
Okay. And those questions have been asked you before, haven't they?
Yes, they have.
And you have continued to work at General Motors over the past 10, well, it's been about 13 years now, since that memorandum first appeared, or reappeared, I should say. And have you ever gone back and talked to any of those fellows to find out whether they ever got a copy of your memo?
Compound and mischaracterization.
It's been 24 years since I wrote this,
Right.
and I have not gone back and asked any of those questions.
Even though your deposition has been taken on multiple occasions, and you've been asked whether those fellows ever received a copy of your memo, you've never bothered to go back and ask them whether they actually got a copy of it, have you?
No, I have not.
Your deposition was taken in the Burton case in 1984, the Jam Pole case in 1986, the Garcia case in 1987, the Weisenhut case in 1988, the Mosley case in 1991, the Ruano case in 1992, the Koval case in 1992, the Renzi case in 1995, the Minock Major case in 1995, and you know that you have been asked on all those occasions who got a copy of this memorandum, haven't you?
Yes.
And notwithstanding the fact that you've been asked that over a period of 13 years, you've never bothered to go back and ask Mr. Perkins or Mr. Dorshimer or Mr. Wallace or any of the people there whether they ever got a copy of your memo?
Argumentative and repetitive.
No, I have not done that.
Why not?
I don't believe they got a copy.
Well, you don't know until you go ask them, do you?
Argumentative and repetitive.
No, I wouldn't know.
Okay, so why haven't you gone to ask them? Since everyone's been asking you for 13 years, did any of these people get a copy of it? Why didn't you go ask them, hey, Ralph, did you ever get a copy of my memo?
Argumentative and repetitive.
I didn't choose to do so.
You just chose not to do so. Did you ever go ask Jack Wallace, hey, Jack, did you ever get a copy of this darn memo I wrote back in 1973? Did you ever ask him that?
No, I didn't.
Argumentative and repetitive.
How about Mr.
Hold it.
How about Mr.
Hold
Dorshimer?
it, hold it, hold it. She's got to catch up.
How about Mr. Dorshimer? Did you ever go and ask him if he ever got a copy of it?
Argumentative
not.
and repetitive.
You just have never bothered to follow up to see who, if anyone, ever got a copy of your value analysis report? have you?
Argumentative.
I have never asked anyone, and I don't believe anyone did.
Wow. You've never asked anyone, have you?
No, I have not.
Okay. And you don't know whether anyone ever did, do you?
Repetitive.
I don't know that anyone has ever got a copy of this, and I don't believe they ever did.
How about Mr. Ridenauer, the fellow that during the summer of 1973, you're around the darn junkyards with him every day. You guys are in the heat together. You're looking at fuel tank locations to try and minimize fuel-fed fires. Did you ever say, you know, Jack, do you want to see this analysis I did? Did you ever show it to him back then?
Objection to the form.
I don't believe that I did.
Okay. Did you ever ask him if he did?
No,
Mr. Ridenauer?
No, I did not.
He's still alive, isn't he?
Yes, he is.
He still works for General Motors, doesn't he?
No, he does not.
When did he stop working for General Motors?
I don't know.
Okay. He worked for General Motors for a long time after this memorandum was done, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
And did you ever go say, hey, Jack, you know, there's a question as to whether you ever got a copy of this memo. Did you ever see it? Did you ever ask him that?
No, I did
Objection.
not.
Okay. Any reason that you never went and asked Mr. Ridenauer that?
Objection.
No, I didn't care to ask him.
Okay. How about Mr. Muddy? He was also in the junkyards with you, you know, looking at this, these fuel tank locations. Did you ever ask him, hey, Paul, Muddy, did you ever see a copy of my memo?
No, I did not.
He still works for General Motors, doesn't he?
Yes, he does.
You never bothered to ask him, follow up on it?
No, I
Never just
haven't.
picked up the phone and asked him, you know, all these lawyers have been asking me, Paul, whether you ever got a copy of this. Did you ever get one? Did you ever do that with Mr. Muddy?
No, I did not.
Okay, why not?
I didn't care to.
Well, don't you think the jury is going to want to know, sir, one of these days in one of these trials, if in fact that memorandum ever got circulated to any of these people?
Objection to the form.
I'm sure that they might.
Okay, and wouldn't the best person to answer that question be you?
Objection. No, it wouldn't actually. That's hearsay.
No, I don't think so.
You don't think you'd be the best person to find out whether that your memorandum ever got to anybody else?
Objection.
I believe you need to ask the people that you want to know whether they got it or not. You have to ask them.
Well, what about you? You don't think that you could give them a call and ask them?
Argumentative.
I don't choose to do so.
Why not?
I don't want to.
You don't want to?
Right.
Why?
Argumentative.
I don't choose to. I don't want to.
Is it too much trouble for you to pick up the telephone and call Paul Muddy?
Argumentative.
I don't care to go ask if anybody got a copy of this document.
You just don't care to?
No, I do not.
Has legal staff from General Motors specifically told you not to?
Hold it. Stop that. That's attorney-client privilege. Do not answer that question.
What you were trying to do in that memorandum that's been marked as Exhibit 4, sir, was an attempt to provide General Motors with a cost breakdown of what it would be worth to prevent fuel-fed fires, correct?
Objection.
That's what's contained in the analysis.
Okay. And your analysis came up to the dollar figure that it cost General Motors about $2.40 per car for people to burn alive in fuel-fed fires, correct?
Objection to the form of the question.
That's not exactly what I've got stated here, but
But that's the general conclusion, isn't it?
Objection.
you'll have to restate that for me.
Is it your opinion, based upon the report that you did, sir, that at that time it was costing General Motors about $2.40 per car for people to burn alive in fuel-fed fires?
Objection.
No, that's not my opinion.
Okay. What was your opinion then as to how much it was costing General Motors back at that time for people to burn alive in fuel-fed fires?
Objection.
I don't know that I have opinion back then.
Well, you had an opinion on the date you did the memo, didn't you?
I made an analysis and stated the conclusions of that analysis, yes.
Okay. Your analysis dated as of June 29, 1973, it was your opinion that it was costing General Motors about $2.40 per car for people to burn alive in General Motors cars, correct?
Repetitive as an answer to argumentative.
No, I did not, because I said that our fatalities related to where there were fires.
Okay, let me see the document for just a second. Your report states that fatalities related to accidents with fuel-fed fires are costing General Motors $2.40 per automobile, right?
That's what that states, yes.
Okay, and that is what you believe to be true on June 29, 1973, correct?
That's what I wrote in 1973.
And you believed it to be true, didn't you?
Objection to the form of the question. Vague.
That's what I stated. Whether it's true or not is what I concluded in that analysis.
Okay, and you signed your name to it.
Yes.
And it was your conclusion on June 29, 1973, that it was costing General Motors $2.40 per automobile for people who died, that's a fatality, right?
Yes.
In fuel-fed fire accidents, right?
As it answered.
That's a version of what I stated, yes.
Okay. Could you, just so the cameraman, since we have it here in front of us, if you could just kind of zoom in on this and show the jury where you came to that conclusion in your report. I think it's on the first page, isn't it?
Yes, right there.
Okay. And it's right there that it says, fatalities related to accidents with fuel-fed fires are costing General Motors $2.40 per automobile in current operation, right?
That's what's stated.
Okay. Now, you're familiar with the need-to-know policy at General Motors, aren't you?
Yes?
You've been familiar with the, quote, need-to-know, unquote, policy since you've worked there, haven't you?
I'm not certain exactly when I knew that that was the general way of operating.
That is the general way of operating at General Motors, isn't it? On a need-to-know basis.
I don't know that it is anymore, but that's normal way of operating.
Well, you still work at General Motors, don't you?
Yes.
Does General Motors still operate on a need-to-know basis?
Speculative.
In some cases, yes.
Okay. Now, tell the jury what that is, a need-to-know basis. That policy at General Motors. What is that when we talk about need-to-know?
Basically states that you need to have access to enough information to do your job.
Okay. And no more. Correct?
Could be construed that way, yes.
Okay. The purpose of the need-to-know policy is to prevent information from spreading beyond the corporation, correct?
That's basically true, yes.
And that was the policy of General Motors. That is still the policy of General Motors, isn't it?
There is a policy against corporate information getting to the public. I don't know that it's called need to know.
Okay.
There is
Now,
a
this
policy.
type of information contained in your report marked as Exhibit 4 would certainly fall within the category of need-to-know information, wouldn't it?
Objection, speculative.
I don't know. It's
Well,
possible.
It's possible that that would be a need-to-know document, correct?
Speculative.
I don't normally think of it that way.
But it could be construed that way, couldn't it?
Speculative.
You could speculate on that. I guess you could assume that. I don't know that I would.
Okay. Would you not agree, sir, that based upon your dealings at General Motors with the need-to-know policy, that that document would fall in the category of documents that would only be circulated to people who need to know that information?
Repetitive. Asked and answered. Speculative.
That's possible, yes.
Okay. And that document is not the kind of document that General Motors would want to have spreading beyond the corporation, correct?
Objection, speculative.
That's correct. Yeah.
You don't know whether your value analysis report marked as Exhibit 4 was circulated on a need-to-know basis, do you?
I do not believe this document was sent to anyone in any fashion.
But you don't know if it was circulated on a need-to-know basis, do you?
I don't know, but I don't believe that it was.
But you don't know, do you?
I do not believe it was circulated.
Well, you haven't called anybody to find out, have you?
Argumentative.
No, I have not.
So you don't know, do you?
Repetitive.
I said I do not know, but I don't believe that it ever was circulated
Yeah,
to anyone.
I know that's what you said, sir. But you've never called anyone to find out whether they got your memorandum, have you?
Repetitive and argumentative.
No, I have not.
Okay, so you don't know whether they did or they didn't, do you?
Repetitive and argumentative.
I do not remember sending it to anyone. I don't believe that I did, and that's all there is.
Okay, but you don't know whether it was ever circulated through General Motors on a need-to-know basis, do you?
Argumentative and repetitive.
No, I do not.
Okay. Now, Pam Ballard, who typed this memorandum for you, may very well have circulated it after she typed it. You don't know, correct?
Speculative.
I don't believe that she would have.
But you don't know whether she did or didn't, do you?
No, I do not.
And she was Ralph Perkins' secretary, wasn't she?
Yes, she
and
was.
he was your boss, wasn't he?
Yes.
Okay. Finally, sir, in the summer of 1973, when you prepared that value analysis memorandum marked as Exhibit 4, and when you did the junkyard survey with Paul Muddy and Jack Ridenauer, and when you analyzed the pending fuel-fed fire lawsuits against General Motors, that same summer you were also working or investigating whether there should be a change made in the location of the fuel tank in the 1977 A car, correct?
I don't recall that explicitly. I believe that's why we were doing the junkyard survey in the first place.
All right, let me try and refresh your recollection on that then, sir. And again, this is a deposition where you were placed under oath on July 15th, 1992 in the case of Koval versus General Motors. Deposition was taken at the Marriott Hotel in Warren, Michigan. Do you remember that deposition?
No, I do not.
Let me show you page 20, line 17 of that deposition and see if it refreshes your recollection as to what else you were working on in the summer of 1973.
Well, it says just what I said, I believe.
Do you have the whole answer there or not? What page do you have?
Well,
Let me take a look.
He's got the whole answer.
Well, no, the answer cuts off in the middle. Can I have page 21, please?
Absolutely.
I believe this states why we were doing the junkyard survey.
Okay, does that refresh your recollection? Having read that now?
Yes, I don't know what the original question was again, I guess.
Having read that prior sworn testimony that you gave, isn't it true that in the summer of 1973, while you were doing the junkyard survey with Mr. Muddy, and you were working on the analysis of the pending fuel-fed fire litigation against General Motors, and when you wrote this value analysis memo marked as Exhibit 4, that at that same time, in that same summer, you were also investigating whether there should be a change made in the location of the fuel tank in the 1977 A car?
What I stated here and what I state again is that's why we were doing the junkyard survey, and the litigation stuff was related to the design of the 77 model car. I don't believe it was an A car at the time. I believe it's probably the B car. But that's why we were doing the junkyard survey in the first place.
Okay, and that's why you did the value analysis memo as well, correct?
Objection.
I told you I don't remember why I did the value analysis.
Well, you did the survey and the litigation study to determine the placement of the fuel tank in the 1977 A or B car, correct?
Yes.
Isn't it true that's also why you did the value analysis memo?
Objection. Like
I told you I don't remember why I did the memo. I don't know that it was connected.
Okay. In any event, your testimony in this particular occasion, when you were asked that, referred to the changing the location of the fuel tank in the 1977 A car, correct?
That's what I stated then, yes.
Okay, and was that the truth then?
Yes.
Okay. So then, in the summer of 1973, when you were doing all these other projects, the reason you were doing the junkyard study was that you were looking at fuel tank locations because you believe it was the 1977 A car that was beginning, and you were trying to determine whether there should be any change in the location of the fuel tank in that vehicle.
Objection.
Okay. I think that's all I have. Let me just check with my associate. Okay, no, that. Thank you, Mr. Muddy. That's all the questions I have.
Mr. Who?
I'm sorry, Mr. Muddy. I keep getting all you fellas confused. I've been here for so long in Detroit now.
My hair is not that white, so.
Mr. Ivey.
And your skin is not that tan.
Yes.
Mr. Ivey, my name is Dan Gerber. I represent General Motors. How are you doing today?
Fine.
Okay. What does the last paragraph of the exhibit conclude, sir?
I've concluded on this analysis, it states it must be tempered with two thoughts. First, it's really impossible to put a value on human life. This analysis tried to do so in an objective manner, but a human fatality is really beyond value subjectively. Secondly, it is impossible to design an automobile where fuel-fed fires can be prevented in all accidents unless the automobile has a non-flammable fuel.
In any way, did you undertake an analysis or, well, there are some conclusions stated in the memo. In any way, are those conclusions, now that you have reflected on it, are any of those inaccurate?
Yes, there are several inaccuracies in the conclusions I reached back in 1973.
And from 1973 on, what inaccuracies in your conclusions have you learned of?
Well, I made a basic conclusion. I stated a value of the fatality of $200,000, and that was a NHTSA government figure that reflects societal harm, that each life related to society was worth $200,000. And then in my analysis using that figure, I concluded that that was a cost to General Motors. And so that assumes that each fatality was a $200,000 cost to General Motors, when in fact that is not the case. The $200,000 is a societal harm. So my conclusion that these fatalities resulted in a cost to General Motors that was basically entirely incorrect. It could be construed as a cost to society of these accidents related to the number of GM automobiles, but it could not be construed in either conclusion that I reached that it was a General Motors cost.
Mr. Kelley certainly asked you a lot of questions about whether anyone saw the exhibit that's in your hand. Why don't you think anyone saw that exhibit?
Well, I believe no one saw this exhibit because I am almost positive that anyone did would have caught my poor conclusions here that are incorrect and would have talked to me about that.
Certainly in engineering, that was part of what people did, is catch mistakes.
Yes, and since no one ever said anything to me about this, I'm almost positive no one got a copy, or they would have questioned me on that issue.
Thank you. That's all I have, sir. Thanks for your time.
No one has to this day ever told you that your report was incorrect, have they?
Hold it. Objection. If you have ever discussed that with a lawyer, I assume Mr. Kelley's not asking about any conversations you've ever had with a lawyer.
I'm talking about his supervisors. I'm just following up on what you asked him. No one to this day has ever told you that your conclusions were incorrect, have they?
No, because no one, as I said, I don't believe anyone's had a copy of this memo to talk to me about that.
Or perhaps it was, sir, that your conclusions were correct and they were satisfactory to General Motors, correct?
That's
I don't
speculative.
believe that's the case.
You don't know, though, do you?
Speculative.
I know that if anyone had seen this memo, they would have come to me and talked to me about the conclusions and how incorrect they were.
Okay, you know that. But you've never talked to any of these people about it, have you?
No, I have not.
Okay, so you really don't know what they would have done to you. You're speculating. I know how you don't like to speculate, but you're speculating that that's what they would have done, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so you're speculating once again.
I'm speculating that they would have talked to me. I know that if I had the same position they had and had seen a memo like this, I would have caught it back then. As when I saw it again after many years, that was my own conclusions when I read it.
It costs General Motors a lot more than $200,000 per person when a jury finds that General Motors is responsible for a person burning alive in a General Motors car. Isn't that true?
Objection. That's speculative.
I know that there is litigation that costs General Motors a lot of money when the plaintiffs are successful in their litigation. Yes.
Okay. And that's in fuel-fed fire cases, correct?
That would be in any case.
But especially in fuel-fed fire cases, correct?
I don't know
Speculative.
how much money we spend in this.
Well, you know it's more than $200,000, isn't it?
Objection.
I don't know.
If you don't know that.
Okay. Let me see your report again. Mr. Gerber had you read the last two paragraphs. It says, first, it's impossible to put a value on human life. That's true, isn't it?
Yes.
Because human life is precious,
Yes.
isn't it?
Yes.
Right. And there's nothing more precious to a parent than their child. Isn't that true?
Irrelevant. Go ahead.
True.
Okay. And a parent who loves their child would rather have their child than all the money in the world, wouldn't they?
Probably.
You have children?
Yes.
Is there any amount of money, sir, that you would take for your children?
No, there would not be.
Is there any amount of money that you would take to watch one of your children burn alive?
No, there's not.
Okay. Now, You say it's impossible to put a value on human life, yet that's exactly what you attempted to do in this memorandum, isn't it?
That's why I used a government figure rather than trying to come up with a number myself.
Sir, I'm not talking about whether there was or wasn't a government figure, because you've already told us you don't know what you relied upon in arriving at this memorandum. What I'm asking you is simply this. You state in your memo that it's impossible to put a value on human life. That's what you say, isn't it?
That's true.
But yet that's what you do in this memo, isn't it?
I used a government figure as for the value of human life. I did not agree with that. That's that number, but that was the number that was in the report.
Did you come up with a value for human life in this report, sir?
Repetitive.
No, I did not.
Okay. Did you put a value on human life in this report?
I used a value taken from a NHTSA government study.
And did you attempt to figure out how much it was costing General Motors for people to burn alive in these cars?
No, I did not.
Okay, so when you say it was $2.40 per fatality per car, you weren't trying to figure out how much it was costing General Motors?
That's what I concluded in this document. As I said before, that's an incorrect assumption.
Okay.
Incorrect conclusion to go with incorrect assumptions.
You next state here that it's impossible to design an automobile where fuel-fed fires can be prevented in all accidents. You don't know whether that's true or not, do you?
No, I do believe that.
Well, you're not a fuel... Are you a fuel systems expert, sir?
No, I'm not.
Okay, so you don't know what fuel systems experts can do you? What can be done?
Vague and ambiguous.
I would say that I do not know everything a fuel system expert can do, but I can also state there is always an accident that's going to be more horrific than you can possibly imagine in everything you design a car to.
Well, you'd agree that it would be possible to design an automobile where fuel-fed fires can be prevented in all accidents where the impact is less than 10 or 15 miles an hour. That's true, isn't it?
Hold on, what was the... Hold on, I'm sorry, I lost the question.
You would agree, sir, that it's possible to design an automobile where fuel-fed fires can be prevented in all accidents where the impact is less than 15 miles an hour. Isn't that true?
Object, it's vague and ambiguous without defining the accident.
No, I don't believe that's the case because you cannot predict all the accidents that are possible to happen.
Even minor accidents?
Objection, it's vague and ambiguous
That's
because the accident is not defined.
You don't think it's possible to design an automobile where fuel-fed fires can be prevented in minor accidents?
Objection, it's vague and ambiguous.
You cannot predict all of the type of accidents that can happen.
Okay. Is it possible, sir, to design an automobile where fuel-fed fires will not occur in minor accidents?
Objection, it's vague and ambiguous.
Is that possible?
I don't know. I've stated I don't believe that it is.
You don't know because you're not a fuel systems engineer expert, are you?
That's correct.
Repetitive.
Okay. That's all I have, sir.
Okay, do you read the deposition or do you waive the reading?
I usually read it.
Okay, we'll read it then.
And a deposition, 542-47.